Dr. Nazaranka, he is from Belarus State University, and Dr. Bode, she is associate professor at the Center for War Studies, University of Southern Denmark. And our today's skills workshop is dedicated to how to formulate research questions, how to develop hypotheses, and think of research methods. So, dear doctors, how we proceed? Maybe Artyom, you can start and have question.
As we have not agreed on that before, I think we can proceed exactly like you are proposing. I can make a short introduction on what I would like to concentrate, to pass the floor to Ingvild to address, let us say, her issues of priority, and then we can provide additional comments to one another and to answer our participants' questions. I think it can be done like that. If Ingvild is okay with such approach.
That sounds fine to me.
Okay, thank you. Then, Nargis, should I start presentation from my PC or you rather do it?
Yes, if you can, please do.
Okay, just a sec. Just a sec, I will try.
So, smart solution sometimes.
Okay, let's see whether it will work.
Yes, and I think we all are missing this all times of in campus, face-to-face presentation, speech, lecture.
Okay, and then does it show?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to come back to this wonderful ADA University organized training school, and I'm particularly happy that I have a chance to talk to you and to share some observations and opinions from both research experience and study assignments in academia on major shortbacks that we as researchers, either junior researchers or a bit more experienced, some drawbacks that smaller mistakes that we sometimes commit that lead to less successful research outcomes. And that goes for me to some extent on what Dr. Valiyev was talking to you previously a couple of days ago, but it mainly goes to how we set our goals within in this or that research area, and I will be talking to you or not being based or bounded on a specific research area only, as these common approaches, I believe they are common or may work in different domains. So we will be talking on how we set the goals, how we structure our research plan in a way, and how we finally come to set of goal objectives and well-formulated hypotheses, and then to choice of methods. Before we go to that, I would like to ask you and remind to ourselves about what's the major final goal and destination of any research. And if we omit a huge possible debate on that, I think we all will agree that the major task or goal or mission, if you would like, of any science, of any discipline, or of research in general, is generation. It's so evident, but still, and obvious, but still, we should bear it in mind. The ultimate goal and ultimate mission is creation of new knowledge. Creation of new knowledge about something, what could be in the domain of or international relations or politics or history or law or new domains of biosciences or chemistry or whatever else. But this should be creation of new knowledge. Should it be about something else? Not creation of new knowledge, not creation of smaller progress in understanding the world around us. It can be something very interesting and important, but it will not be about research and scientific research. And that is why when we come to these how many 5 bullet points that I would like to talk to you about, every time when we address any of these points, we bear in mind why we are doing something. Because if our only desire is to make a good presentation or a good article or a good report, I think it is bad way to approach it. Because how I understand and feel and would like you to try to share it is that we make research to make discoveries. I think this is what makes us passionate about those fields that we are working in. But still, these 5 points that could be complemented with also contexts or the very material of research outcome, like text of an article or or dissertation or thesis or whatever else that can be complemented. But these points are structuring our research paper, if you would like, and also our research process in a way, how I see it. Regardless of the topics so different that you were and are and will be presenting tomorrow, if I understand correctly, that are in a very, very interesting domain of human security, but with different approaches. Anyway, we set certain topic for our research that is quite demanding in a way, because it should be already like including in itself some other basic points, like in a way being linked to the goal already that we maybe don't know at all. But when we come to the topic formulation, it's in a way, you can put it in other words, it's setting a problem for your research. Because if in my understanding at least, if the topic has no articulation of any problem, of anything that can be in a way debatable or questionable, then it may be something, once again, very interesting, but not research oriented. But when we have topic, I will bypass some slides to come back to them later. I would like to come to this very, very nice picture to address the issue of context. And when I'm saying context, it's about answering the question, what has been done before me in this field, in this topic? Why this stage of coming into the area is crucially important. And it is not about being limited that you have studied bachelor and master in still it may be important, but it's about coming to the domain of your, once again, topic, to answer the question, what has been done before me? Why? Once again, this is crucially important because it allows you to see what is already done. And why this picture? Because the domain or the topic is vast and is very wide and can be unreachable. And when you come to such the literature, to database or to regular library, and you see those tons of books and monographs and articles, you can be frightened, but still you should go through it to narrow. Because when you see what has been done, you have a chance to answer the question, what has not been done yet? And then you set that bunch of questions that require answers from researchers. And then you get an opportunity to pick a question of those that are not answered yet. I'm sorry. To try to start your discovery of this unanswered question. But to do that, once again, you should check whether this question has not been answered. Does it mean that if you have a set of questions that were already answered, you should not or cannot address them? No, it doesn't. Because even if it was already answered why particular political leaders made particular choices in particular situations, and it looks that these questions were answered. What should allow us to readdress the same question, even if it is answered? You see, when we will answer, we will see that it is not the same question, because what will allow us to do that? New primary sources of information, new methodology that was not available before or that was not applied before, or new or additional material about the same phenomenon. If something was done in the context of a particular part of the country or particular region, and it is clear how human security issues, for example, war in Turkey, what we were listening a couple of minutes ago about, does it mean we should not address it or regarding Azerbaijan or Belarus or Kazakhstan or Denmark or whatever, any other country, applying the same methodology? If it has not been applied, then it's a reasonable question to check, because coming to the start of our conversation today is the primary idea is get new knowledge. And if we check with new methods, then we'll leave to these particular contexts for next generation of researchers already available answers. So coming back to the context setting, before you enter formulation of research questions or specific research questions, you should answer yourself to what extent these questions were already answered, and then narrow it to the part that has not been answered yet, and then pick from that what you are interested or what you are capable with resources and experience to answer. So all of that can, and in a way, in my understanding, should be packed or pre-packed into a topic. Then, colleagues, when we go to the goal, you cannot start, on the one hand, you cannot start the journey without knowing the destination. So goal setting in a way is destination setting. And to set that destination, I don't use here on this slide or term or word hypothesis, but it's pre-assumption, or like you believe or you think that something looks in a certain way, and you present that vision or that assumption, and then you arrive to the question of checking that pre-assumption. And without pre-assuming something, you cannot, I believe, you cannot set the goal. So goal is your general destination that should be linked to the topic, that should be linked to the problem, and that should be detailed into objectives that should be linked in return to the goal, that should be described in your structured research, and that should be linked to finally to the outcomes. So how I would pose it, should you line out any of these points that are available here, or even any two or even any three of them, if you hide, for example, them, if you have these points correctly formulated, or when you only see the goal, you may pre-assume what will be objectives of this research. Or when you only see objectives, you will definitely be able, if everything is correctly formulated, in my understanding, you will definitely understand what was the general goal or what is the topic about. So setting correct questions is crucial, basic start of any research, because then it is when we talk about goal and objectives, it's questioning. When we talk about structure and outcomes, it's answering. And it is not only about correctly understanding or feeling where you would like to arrive, but it is also about correct wording of it, because finally you make research not only for yourself, despite you satisfy your curiosity doing this research, but in a way you doing it for the public and for the humanity as well, and for the domain of knowledge that you address. And that is why I would like to come to this very, very easy and simple slide with forbidden, in brackets, wording, or wording of goals and objectives. Despite you may find in many monographs, in many articles, including highly quoted, goal setting or sometimes objective setting linked to saying simply analyze or research or study, I believe that this type of wording should be forbidden. Should you ask me? And the answer is very simple, because analysis is just a method. It describes the way you, not the destination itself. While we are expecting from the goal setting and from the objectives formulation correct setting of analysis, once, as well as any other method, is method. It's answering the question how, but not where to arrive. The same way, using words in goal setting, like research, I fully see them. I read them almost every week. Should it be very well made monograph or just students or paper? Why, for example, goal to research is very bad? Because, come on, colleagues, the goal of research is to research. So what should be then the final destination. We want to reveal interconnections. We want to set bunch of new rules. Or what is the question? So goal is a question and destination that we want to arrive. When we set the destination in incorrect way, then it will be hardly reachable. And when we come finally to the outcomes of research, and you come to the outcomes of your research and you want to show them, then I will be comparing as a reader, not as an author. I will be comparing it to the topic, to your goal, to your objectives. Because if we want to show, for example, and we put it into topic that I will use a specific example, whether COVID-19 had impact on transport relations between China and Central Asia, then it is clearly said that we should reveal, did it have impact or not? So most likely we will need to showcase what was before, what happened, and what is available now, and see whether there is any change. And then that type of change will be basis for measuring the impact. Maybe it will be zero, but we should check it, whether it's about security issue of transport interconnections or economic domain or humanitarian situation, even like that. But when we have only formulation of topic like influence or impact of COVID-19 on transport relations between China and countries of Central Asia, and then we will only talk about transport sector of China and transport sector of countries of Central Asia, and that is, then most likely we have not correctly set the goal, or have not correctly set the topic, have not correctly understood the problems that we want to solve, research problem. So once again, and to finish with this part and share with you some very, very simple advice from project approach that I'm passionate of. Once again, research questions are extremely important. They are about destination we want to arrive in our research, and it is important to formulate them correctly. But just to take 5-6 minutes more from you, I would like to share with you some tips from project approach. Project approach that can be applied to solving business problem and to a certain extent to solving research problems as well. And I would like to start with SMART goals formulation that I believe all of you are very well aware of, but just like a reminder, part of the SMART requirement is fully applicable to formulating research goals and research questions and setting objectives. And that is about being specific, setting the goal measurable. So in a way measurable, that we can make a judgment whether it was or was not achieved. It should be relevant to the topic and to the context, and it should be, it's in a classical version, attainable, but I would say at least hypothetically achievable. So this specific, measurable, attainable, and relevant is very good for formulating almost any research goal. Why not finishing with T? Because it's very strictly time-bound in setting research goals, because it's not like a fully like a project, but still, if you it will be in a way time bound, because otherwise you will not fit into this criteria. Another very powerful and important tool that is used in project development and management, that includes also research projects. It's a tool of problems and needs analysis, and a tool of constructing problems tree and converting it into objectives tree, or it's about talking problems versus solutions. What it is about? It's about putting your focal problems that you are thinking about. Then when we use this for research, negative consequences is that we don't know this, we don't know that, we don't know something else. So some questions that are unanswered. For what reasons? Possibly that this discourse analysis method was not used, or that we were locked into one discipline, for example, and then it leads to the situation where we lack certain type of information. We simply may lack primary data. So we build this problem tree. Why it's called tree? Because it goes from roots to the problems and consequences. Why it's powerful? Because when you simply roll it, you convert it into objectives tree. Because what was negative consequences? Those unanswered questions will and may become, may and possibly will become your project or research project objectives through additional use of new or primary source or new interdisciplinary connection or something like that. So just try to come back to this tool of making problem tree for almost any problems that you have, if you can put it like a project. And another hugely powerfully and important tool is logical framework metrics that may help you solve, in my understanding, almost any problem, or at least set your mind on how to do that. What I would like to take from this LFM approach for you is what is specifically linked to our research approach or in projects. As first setting your hypothesis or your pre-assumption on how something looks like, or to come to it, we need to make certain 2, 3, 4, 5, not a lot, objectives, and then we come to the goal. Because of course, it's so clear to almost any of us that to set from the very beginning correct research goal is very difficult. Very, very, very difficult. So I would be advising to you to start with thinking about where you want to arrive, at least on work basis, and then look into the pathways to it, and then maybe you will arrive to a correct question that will lead you to a fantastic research with so interesting research outcomes that you would be happy sharing. So I will stop on that with this part and pass the floor to my colleague.
Thank you, Artsiom. Dr. Bode.
Yes, I'm ready to go. Let me just start my presentation. So hopefully that will work. It doesn't. Okay, let me just see. Sorry, it asked me to upload something, so I'm just going to do that. I'm sorry, that takes a bit more time.
Okay.
Okay. Almost there. Okay. Right, so it's opening, looking promising. Let me just, while this is loading, already thank Artsiom for his very comprehensive coverage of the research process that makes my task easier. And you will see I approach this from a slightly different angle, right? So I go into more specifically kind of what kind of methods we could work with. And I look in particular at interpretive methods in this sense. So to start us off, I just want to introduce a brief differentiation between methodology and methods. Because the two are sometimes used synonymously, but they're actually refer to very different things. So when we talk about methodology, we actually talk about kind of assumptions that we have about ontology. So what should be studied and its reality status. So in a way, what is the nature of the social world and what social entities do you look at in terms of our research? And then there is epistemology, which refers to how we gain knowledge about the world and what we study. So so basically, what kind of knowledge also can we gain about the world? And then lastly, there are the methods, which is also part of this methodology package. And these are really the tools, kind of the means that we do to carry out, that we use to carry out our research. So basically, you have the differentiation between methodology and methods. You can think about it as kind of, one is a kind of a more logic of inquiry, which is methodology, and one is really the techniques that you use to gain access to particular data, right? And what I think why I'm raising this and why I think it's important to distinguish between the two is that we all have different methodologies, but we might still be using similar methods, right? So many methods actually can be used in the context of different methodologies. So for example, the typical method of the research interview can be used both in terms of kind of a positivist framework, but it can also be used in an interpretivist framework. And then it just kind of changes how we deal with the data and how we handle the method itself. But methods themselves are really just these techniques. Yeah, as I started off with, so I'm going to talk to you a bit about interpretive methods or how to approach method, or research generally interpretively. And I come from a background of international relations. So these are just kind of some typical kind of approaches in my discipline that will kind of lead you towards studying your research subject interpretively. But some of these are also, I think, applicable across other disciplines and sciences. So this is just an ideal typical representation of where the differences and the main difference between positivism and interpretivism really lie in terms of the methodology that we use. And I don't want to go into this too much. If you're interested in this, I can share my slides with you after this talk. But I just want to highlight on the interpretive side of things that what we're talking about here is research that is really mainly interested in meaning making, in a sense, right? So this kind of idea that that the social world by its very constitution is fundamentally different to the physical world or the world of natural phenomena, and therefore we cannot use or kind of mimic methods that are used in the natural sciences, which is kind of what positivism tries to do. But interpretivism holds basically this is not possible. We have to use a totally different set of assumptions and tools to guide our research because the social world is fundamentally different, right? And how it is different, it's mostly relating to the fact that we have all kinds of intersubjective meanings present in the social world. And intersubjective meanings are really meanings that do not exist only in the minds of one agent, but are rooted in and are constitutive of social relations and practices. So if you think about something like sovereignty, right, which is something that has concerned IR scholars for a long time, that is more of these intersubjective meanings, right? And this also then follows that knowledge that is produced by us as researchers about that social world is never kind of value neutral, because we always come to our research with certain assumptions and background factors that have shaped us and what we think is relevant in terms of doing research. So basically, the idea is always that interpretive research tries to understand social events on the basis of interpreting actions, happenings, and texts, and therefore also human behavior. And I found this quote by Foucault actually quite helpful to kind of give us some sense of what this means for us as a researcher if we approach the world in this fashion, which is, we must not imagine that the world turns toward us a legible face, which we would only have to decipher. The world is not an accomplice of our knowledge, right? So it's not quite as easy as just trying to kind of look and observe what's going on there and then trying to build models or theories of that. But there's a lot more kind of hidden meanings and hidden layers that we would need to uncover in order to make sense of our research question. So in terms of interpretive research, how do we do that? And this is just kind of the bare bones of that, right? But as I said, as an interpretive researcher, you are mostly interested in meaning making. So this is really central to your endeavor as a researcher. And this, first of all, means that the role of you as a researcher in knowledge making should also be reflected on from the start. So as I said already, interpretivism assumes that the kind of epistemologies and methodologies of positivism do not provide us with neutral objective tools, but they only provide us with tools that produce a certain type of meaning in the world. And this is kind of a fundamental assumption. So the core commitment then becomes that you reflect on your own role as a researcher in generating, on making the knowledge that you seek to make through your research project. So when it comes to selecting your data and considering how you generate it, I find sometimes that the interpretive approach is kind of, it kind of maps out what I would call kind of common sense, in a sense how you structure a research project. So it basically comes down to thinking through an array of possibilities in a chosen research setting and determining the most appropriate, right? So the goal is always to access a very wide variety of meaning, so that your analysis is based on solid ground and on solid evidence, right? And interpretivism does this by kind of mapping your empirical field for exposure and intertextuality. And we'll just talk about briefly what this means. So exposure means that you seek out a variety of meanings that are made or expressed by relevant research participants, right? So this can be done face-to-face or by looking at different kinds of documents. So your aim should be to get access to research participants who occupy different positions within your chosen research field, and therefore have different experiences about the subject that you are studying, right? So to give you an idea, for example, you're studying something related to the United Nations, right? So you might want to talk to not only, of course, UN officials, but also diplomats. You can think about how civil society representatives, for example, have a different perspective on research subject than diplomats have, and even people at different kind of hierarchical positions within a certain organization that you're examining will have different perspectives on your research topic. So the aim really is to get access to these differentially positioned actors across in your field across different sites, who the assumption is really have access to different types of information. So the first kind of step into or to get to this is kind of really to map your research field in a systematic way. And then the second goal is kind of to map your field for intertextuality. So this just means that you look for diverse kinds of evidence that may be available, from interviews to images to written reports to speeches, right? And reading these in an intertextual fashion means that you consider different interpretations that these texts or these other forms of data reveal, right? So often types of data draw on other types of data, right? And you can this allows you to access meaning making around a particular concept. I think a general kind of rule of thumb is that the wider your map, the more varied your exposure, and the more transparent your account of how you selected these is, the clearer it is what your knowledge claims are, and the more trustworthy, in a sense, are the claims that you make about knowledge. What I think is quite interesting also in terms of interpretivism, and also actually interesting, it maps onto what Artsiom has been talking about, is that research design is not kind of treated as if it's kind of cast in stone, right? But it's actually something that's moving, right? And that also can adapt, right? So because your thinking in terms of research project changes constantly as you go through analyzing your data and on maybe reformulating your research question even to a certain extent, right? So I think in changing these is actually normal and legitimate, right? So it's not something that you have to hide if you do interpretive research, right? It's something you can be very open about. And this is also the point of it, right? So as you learn more about your field of study, this is kind of what is expected, right? So that something is changing about your thinking, and this shows in your research design. So I just wanted to close my presentation with a brief illustration, just to give you an idea, right, what interpretive research looks like using an example from my own research. And I will be very brief about this. So here, for example, I put kind of the four kind of main components of my research at this stage, right? So first of all, the kind of the puzzle or the research question, which in my case is how do, oh, sorry, this is my timer, my 10 minutes are over. Sorry. I just keep going on for 2 more minutes if that's okay. So my question really is, how do weapon systems with autonomous features change use of force norms? So I'm invested in this kind of question of weaponizing artificial intelligence, and to what extent this changes kind of the rules of warfare, right? What we consider as appropriate when using force. And you see here that my argument, and by the way, I call this argument and not hypothesis. You will see that sometimes in interpretive research, people are using different words just to make sure that you are kind of associated with the right camp in terms of when reviewers hit your material, right? Or when somebody external reads it. So it's kind of clear what kind of path you're following, right? It can be quite helpful. So my argument really is that norms, which understand as standards of appropriateness, change through verbal, but also through non-verbal practices. So by this, I mean practices associated with testing, developing, and deploying weapon systems with these autonomous or AI-driven features. And here you see the methods I use for this research is actually are kind of quite straightforward and can also be used by various other approaches. So I use participant observation, interviews, visual analysis, surveys, and document analysis. And really the main message of this is that I aim to draw out contextualized practices of meaning making and their normative character by and across different kinds of groups of actors and across different states. I will skip this because I'm running out of time, but I want to close with some key takeaways to allow also time for your questions. So I think to conclude, basically, I think that interpretive research in a sense makes you become committed to studying contextualized meaning-making practices and to also reflecting on your own role as a researcher in generating that knowledge and how your kind of background and your positionality influences what you consider to be relevant and knowledge relevant. In interpretive design, there's no kind of one-size-fits-all approach, right? So rather, it kind of comes down to selecting between many different research designs. And the type of methods that you would like to choose, I mean, they always have to be thought of in relation to a research question. I quite often see people choosing, for example, interviews, right, which is a nice method. We all agree, but they have to do something for your research, right? So it has to be clear why there is something that you aim to get out of the interviews that you wouldn't have gotten out of other types of data. Then interpretive research, just as other type of research, should be systematic. So it should be very transparent what it is you're aiming to do. There should be a clear logic of argument. And you should always kind of approach your interpretations with an attitude of doubt, right? So there should always be kind of a checking of your own sense making. And then lastly, I just want to highlight this, right? Because sometimes I get the feeling that there's this kind of assumption that interpretive methodology is kind of only relevant for certain types of topics, right? But actually, I find, and as you see, my research really is in the security area, right? So you can apply this to all kinds of empirical phenomena within the subject of IR or politics or sociology, right? So there are no limits, right? It's just a matter of what is interesting to you as a type of research question that determines your methodology, I would say. And I'll end it here, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Artyom. Thank you, the Ingvild. Very interesting, you know, all the hints for researchers, for young researchers, which they might implement in their future research work.